Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. I stumbled upon a link here from TV tropes of all places, having no idea this existed as a type of cryptid or had a name. My experience is from late 2006, just before winter break of my freshman year of college. I went to a small college in rural western Pennsylvania, and the freshman parking lot was on the edge of campus up against some state gamelands. We'd go out there a couple of nights a week to smoke some weed, and that night, we went to our usual spot in a clearing with a fallen log to sit on, just past what you could see from the parking lot, though we could see the lights from the lot through the trees behind us. Now, I'm sure you're already thinking, it was probably just the weed. But we were veteran smokers, and we had just started smoking that night, and we had been smoking out of the same bag previous nights without any weird things happening. We packed a bowl and had maybe one hit each as we sat there talking quietly. It was winter, and this night was particularly cold, like in the Fahrenheit, but still no wind and almost nothing making sound out in the woods where we were. I took my first hit, and then I handed the bowl and lighter back to my friend, and then looked up to exhale. That's when I saw it through the smoke. A humanoid face in the trees on the other side of the clearing, opposite the parking lot. It was just above a branch that it had hand wrapped around, and I think it had 3 fingers with a very long, narrow thumb that stuck out several inches past its other fingers, each tip with a pointed nail. As the smoke cleared, I got a better look at its face. Very pale, almost grayish skin, bald, no eyebrows, no other hair of any kind, no ears that I could see. Big eyes relative to its head that were very dark in color, catching just a little bit of light from the lights of the parking lot behind us, which made them seem kind of reflective. I didn't get a great look at the nose or mouth as I was fixated on the eyes, but from what I recall, they seemed small relative to its head compared to a human. I tapped my finger's knee and quickly glanced over at him to see if he saw it as well. And he was staring at it too. So it's something we both saw independently. I looked back at it just as it released its hand from the branch, revealing very long, thin fingers to match the thumb, and it moved backwards out of our sight without making a sound, even though there were dry leaves all over the ground. I guess only about 5 seconds actually passed during this span, but it felt much longer, and there was this odd calm over the whole situation. And as soon as it was out of sight, my friend and I both felt intense fear, and we ran back to the parking lot. It was in such a panic that he didn't realize he had stuffed the still smoking bowl into his coat pocket and dropped the lighter. We ran to the opposite side of the lot from the woods, where there was a road, some cars passing, and some other students walking around, where we finally felt safe. There was an initial, "Oh my God, did you see that? What was that?" kind of conversation before we calmed down and talked about the details of what we saw, which definitely matched up perfectly. The only thing he noticed that I didn't was that he said he didn't think it even had a mouth. We thought maybe it was a classic gray alien or something, but knew no one would believe us and didn't tell anyone else. The next day, we went back to the spot in the woods and found our lighter standing upright on the log where we were sitting on. The odds of it falling and landing like that are very, very low, adding another creepy factor to what happened. Did this thing find it and put it there? We also walked over to the tree where we saw it and found the branch it was grasping. It was a good 10 to 12 feet above the ground. We couldn't even reach it by jumping, and there was nothing around. No stumps, no rocks, no lower branches that it could have been standing on, so it had to be tall to appear there. Weirdly, the leaves on the ground had been disturbed all around the area beneath the tree. Not like just tracks or something, but it was as if something had intentionally brushed the leaves away and then dug some shallow holes, maybe 4 to 6 of them, about 6 to 8 inches deep and 2 to 3 inches wide. My friend was a biology major who had been an Eagle Scout and now works in a state park, so he knew a good deal about most of the area's wildlife and didn't know of anything that would disturb the ground in that fashion. Plenty of animals dig, but they don't sweep away an area of leaves like that just to dig a couple of holes like that. He couldn't find any other tracks leading away from the area either. We never went back out there after dark again, and we never saw it again either. Anyway, that's my possible encounter with a crawler. Make of it what you will.
I had this encounter about a year ago, but I started thinking about it quite a bit recently. So I made an account just to post this. So please do tell me your thoughts about this. I had decided to go on a solo hiking trip for about 2 weeks. This would have been my second time doing something like this. The first 2 days of the hike were very average and relaxing. Just a simple hike. But at night, things got a little bit weird. I went to sleep at around 9 or 10 p.m. and nothing much happened until around 2 a.m. I remember smelling a faint stench of rotting meat. It wasn't anything too crazy, but it was weird enough to somewhat wake me up. I tried to ignore it and go back to sleep, but then I started to notice that something was moving around my tent. I did think that, because of the smell and the sounds, that it could be some carnivorous animal that maybe stank of rotting meat for whatever reason. But since I was half asleep, I wanted to make sure it's not a bear or something, so I opened my eyes to check around. Now, just to note that during the night, the moon was quite bright, so it was possible to see quite well outside. So when I opened my eyes, I could see a vague, lanky, humanoid shadow outside my tent. I didn't feel like I was in danger or anything. I did have a sidearm with me, so even if it was some creep, I didn't really feel threatened while holding a gun. After about a minute, the guy left, and the smell also disappeared. But since it was a very creepy encounter, I stayed awake for about an hour, and nothing else happened. And after nothing else happened, I went back to bed. The next day I had that weird feeling of being watched by something dangerous. But I don't know if it was because I was confident in my ability to protect myself or whatever, but I didn't feel like I was in any danger at all. I just felt creeped out. I didn't really enjoy that day all that much, to be fully honest, and because of that, I set up camp a lot faster than I usually did, but didn't go to bed at my normal time, since I didn't want someone sneaking up on me again. At around 1 a.m., I could smell that weird smell again, so I gripped my gun a little bit tighter and tried to find the guy. But instead, all I saw were just a pair of yellowish eyes in the distance. I stared at them for about 5 minutes, and then they just vanished, together with the smell. I didn't feel like I was being watched anymore during that night, so after an hour, I did decide to go to sleep. The next day, the feeling of being watched was back, but again, I didn't feel as though I was in any danger at all. But I decided that even though I felt that way, I would still rather cut this trip short instead of actually getting into a situation where I am in danger, so I started making my way back. Though, through a more roundabout path. Nothing really happened that night. The next day I suddenly could smell that rotten stench. It wasn't any stronger than before, but since I was in a decently large clearing at that time and didn't see anyone or anything around me, I did panic a little bit and started walking with a faster pace. I'm not exactly sure on how long I walked after that, but around midday, the stench got stronger. Now, I think it's important to note that I don't have the best vision and should wear glasses. But I don't most of the time, so when I looked around me and saw a grey humanoid figure quite far away to my left, I did panic. But by the time I put my glasses on, it was gone. After that, I really didn't feel like staying there for much longer, so I started doing a slow run to get out of there faster. I'd run quite a distance while feeling something following me, but then I ran into this strangely peaceful clearing where both the stench and the feeling of being watched stopped. It was a relatively small clearing with a few small boulders around. But the strange thing was that a man who was in his late 40s or maybe even early 50s was sitting on one of the boulders. He was wearing very plain dad clothes, definitely not something you would be wearing while hiking in the middle of nowhere. Plus, he had no gear anywhere near him. But the thing that I noticed first about that guy was his strangely bright green eyes. They weren't bright in a literal sense, but more like the kind of brightness you would see in the eyes of a child. After running for so long, I was exhausted, and the man noticed that and told me to sit down on one of the boulders and rest. I didn't even think about it and sat down. We talked for a bit, mostly about hiking and nature, and while talking, he had this very friendly smile that made me feel at ease. When I had rested, he offered to help me build my campsite in the clearing. He was very good at starting a fire. We shared a cup of tea, and he told me that it was very nice talking to me, but he has to go now. He didn't really say why or where he has to go, but he just stood up and left. That night I didn't hear any noises other than a few birds and crickets. When I woke up the next day, I felt very refreshed. I packed up and started to continue along the trail. I didn't feel like I was being watched or smelled that stench at all during the rest of my hike. Well then, this was the first time I've told this story in full detail. I usually say that some animal or whatever was following me, since that way people would actually believe me. But I decided to actually write exactly what happened. I also wanted to apologize for the long post and my English. I'm not a native English speaker, so please do correct me if I made any grammatical mistakes. And please, do share your thoughts on this.
Hey y'all, wasn't sure about posting, but why not? I'm very skeptical and thought it was in my head for some time. About 10 years ago, I was on my way south on 99 between Sacramento and Galt at like 11 p.m., driving about 70 miles per hour. When near the side of the freeway, I saw something very long, white, and pale pinkish, with a face I remember describing as Rabbit, Bear, Man. Its eyes reflected back at me very brightly, and it moved very, very smoothly and quickly back into the brush on weird, effed up limbs. I was moving, going so fast, and had loud music on, so I wasn't able to observe for long or listen for any sounds. It scared the F out of me. And when I got to my then boyfriend's house, I broke down trying to describe what I saw. At this point, 10 long years later, and many substances between now and then, I frankly do not remember exactly what it looked like, but I remember how I felt, and my now husband is able to tell me exactly how I described it to him. I convinced myself it wasn't real and never really talked about it. But a few years later, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I told a very close friend who then freaked out and said her friend, someone I'd never met before, saw something similar. It was off the freeway in Northern California, and a car full of people all saw it. He had described it to her exactly the same way I described it to my boyfriend/husband. We met a while later and both had one of those weird crying goosebumps but not actually sobbing moments talking about it. Now, I don't know about the Skinwalker thing or Slender Man. Neither of us saw it stand upright, but some of the stories here do kind of seem like the same thing. Not gonna lie, I partly hesitated because it just seems like a lot of role-playing on here, but I'm too curious now. Has anyone here seen something like that? With more of an animal face, effed up limbs, and on all fours? Or am I dealing with something different?
My girlfriend and I are renting a cabin in West Virginia. On Thursday, a nasty ice storm came through and knocked out the power, and it has been out ever since. The whole county is dark and will be for a while. The animals are acting bold, and last night, my girlfriend and I walked out to the end of the long driveway to get something out of the car. Her dog started staring at the edge of the field and went towards it. He is young, and so he gets distracted and does sometimes wander. He doesn't run away, but you will look up and see him behind the house or something. Anyway, my girlfriend runs to him and starts to bring him back when I spot something at the edge of the field. It's what the dog was looking at. I see it run across the road and into the field. It was very low to the ground and pale in color. It's too fast and dark to make out what it is, and I assume it's a coyote. So I call out to her, "Hey, there's something over there. Get back here." And she walks back over to me by my car. From there, we hold the light and shine it over that direction, and I see its eyes looking at us. Then, I see more sets of eyes, probably about 7 in total, and they are shifting up and below the hill in the field, hiding and peeking out to see us. And at this point, we still think it's coyotes. So I keep the light on them while she gets what she needs from the car. But the thing is, I kept my light and my eyes on them the whole time, and they seemed to stand up. Suddenly, their eyes shine would rise up as if they stood up on their back legs, and their eyes went from about 1 to 2 feet off the ground to easily 5 to 6 feet. I did not mention this to her, and I just said, "Coyotes, let's go inside." We would have to go outside to put gas in the generator as the power was still off. She held a flashlight, and I filled up the generator. She is shining the light around, keeping an eye out for anything, as well as keeping the dog with us. And she spots 2 sets of eyes about 100 yards away at the bottom of the big hill that the house sits on. She says, "Something's down there." I say, "Coyotes or deer?" And she says, "Whatever it is, it just doubled in size." And sure enough, I look, and these things are rising up and back down like the ones earlier. We have coyotes here. Everything about these events screams coyote to me, but I cannot fathom how they stood up like that. And I saw it run across the road, and though I did not get a good look at it, it was not a deer. It was fast and low to the ground. It did not bound and jump like the deer do. And I've been thinking about it all day. Like, it had to be a coyote. But then, how did it get so tall?
So this takes place in the Sacramento, California area. It was about 2 years ago now. It was winter, nighttime, around 2 a.m. I had just gotten off work but wasn't ready to go home, so I pulled over on the side of the road before turning into my neighborhood. On this street, there's a suburban neighborhood to the right and fields and trees to the left. As I was sitting there, I saw a figure come out of the neighborhood, a little less than a quarter of a mile ahead of where I was parked. Approximately where the neighborhood park is. It was hard to see from that distance, but it appeared tall, 7 to 8 feet, super skinny and bony, hunched over with long arms. It sprinted across the road at a speed faster than I've ever seen a human go. I couldn't guess the speed, but it was fast enough to concern me. If it wasn't for its speed, I probably would have just assumed it was a human and ignored it. But anyways, it disappeared into the fields. Something calm came over me. I don't know what it was, but something was keeping me from panicking. I remember just feeling like, okay, it is time to leave now, and calmly driving home. It wasn't until a few months later that I realized I had seen that and that it wasn't normal. Flash forward to a week ago. A friend and I were at the same park doing some spells. We're witches. As it got later into the night, we both started to feel more and more unwelcome there. As I was finishing up my spell, we heard an inhuman, guttural scream that sounded like it came from the area I saw that creature cross at. That's not particularly incriminating, but as soon as I heard the scream, its apparent location made me think of the creature. I didn't tell this to my friend as she is easily spooked, and I just tried to calmly finish up my spell. Didn't want to let my fear get out of control when doing spell work. We finally finished up and packed up and started the trek back to the car. As we left, we faced a dark area with lots of bushes and trees across from the sidewalk we were taking to get to the car. As soon as I faced that dark spot, I had the feeling of looking at a face. I didn't literally see a face, but it was the feeling of seeing a face. And it didn't feel like a human face. It felt like something that understood what I was, but didn't understand why I was there. It wasn't quite hostile, but had the attitude of, get out of my home. Once again, I didn't tell my friend that I saw that. Not until we got into the car. Ever since then, I have not been able to shake the feeling that that face belonged to the same creature I saw 2 years ago. What do you all think? Also, similar story but not the same. Last night, I was driving in a wooded area near Sac, and I saw a tall, burly figure in the woods with a white face. Not white as in Caucasian, white as in stark white. I thought it was wearing a green t-shirt, but I only saw it for a split second. It gave me such a bad, uneasy feeling that I started putting protection sigils on my windows. I told the guy I was with what I saw, and he didn't tell me until later, but he said he's heard rumors of people seeing white walkers in these woods that are described as tall and having white faces and black hair. I don't know if he meant skinwalkers or what, but that's what he said. I also felt like something was watching me in those woods later.
I live in northern part of North Carolina. I need to get off my chest 2 encounters that don't involve me, but other family members and friends. My best friend was dropping me off at home, and she suddenly changed her tone and started yelling, telling me to get inside fast, and she drove off. She said she saw a hovering type figure with no face, but it was wearing a suit, and it sounded odd to me until my sister said she saw something similar. It deeply freaked me out because they don't really talk to each other, and my friend is more skeptic when it comes to these types of things, but she stands by to what she saw today. My sister and her fiance both talked about seeing an all-white figure run across the road near their house on 2 separate occasions when they were both alone, to my knowledge. They live in a heavily wooded rural area near the Roanoke River. My sister was staying at my house, and in the room she was sleeping in, she told me her bed and furniture started shaking and something pulling on the blankets. I myself am Catholic, so I suggested we pray the rosary, and she agreed. She has told me nothing else has ever happened in my house after that, but she did mention weird stuff happening on their own property, things making noises on their own, pets acting strange, etc. I find it hard to believe them sometimes, but when I wanted to ask more about it, they would always stare off into the distance and act quiet like they were zoned out or something, and that made it even more creepy since they both are the loud, cheerful, joking type. I don't really worry about this stuff, but I would like to start camping sometime soon and do more outdoor activities. When I stay over on that piece of land, there is just something so eerie about the air there. They have problems with coyotes in the area, so I tried to rationalize that may have something to do with it. The coyotes are loud and they howl, but something is even creepier when they are silent. But a shiny white figure with no face crawling and leaping over the road at night? Can someone please help identify this? Even if it's paranormal or some natural undiscovered creature or something, I don't care. It's just I have experienced what that place is like, and it gives me the creeps. Thank you. Other encounters they described, but could possibly be something else, includes my sister riding down their driveway and hearing something chasing her. She has a long driveway that goes into the woods. Jars making clinking, ringing noises on their own. Cats staring and focusing on something on the wall or on the ceiling in a tracking manner, but for no visible reason.
I have a story. So this basically is the reason that I hate the dark so much, and no one except for maybe 3 to 6 people believe me about this happening. I know, this sounds like straight bullshit, but I swear to God, this happened. When I was around 12 at that time, 4 years ago, I would play tag at night with my friends next door. I will call them L, S, and M for privacy purposes. One night, I was playing as usual when I was hiding under the tight space under the deck. I smelled a rotten stench and saw a black mass of something turn and face me. I acted like any normal 12-year-old and I got out of there as fast as I could, only to be tagged. I was annoyed, but I saw someone running up into the treehouse, so I ran over and hid, waiting for them to come out. After 5 minutes later, I got impatient and I decided to sneak up into the treehouse. Well, no one was up there, and as I put my foot up onto a step to the 2nd floor, I guess you could call it, a slimy, damp hand tightly wrapped around my ankle. I got free, but I fell over the railing and hit my head pretty hard. And I opened my eyes, only to see something tall, and I'm talking 8 foot tall here. I am 6'2" now, but I was around 5'10" at that time. Anyways, I see this thing, but I can't move. I try to scream, but nothing happens. I know what you guys are possibly thinking, and no, not sleep paralysis. I've had that before, and this was different. It shot down and wrapped its hand around my throat. It said "run" in my ear in a sharp, harsh tone, kinda like Vecna mixed with Will Ramos. And as soon as it says that, I can move again. It's gone now, but my neck is still in pain. I get up and book it, but I get stopped by L, and he spins around and asks me where I've been and that they have been looking for me for 20 minutes. I tell them what happened and he calls bullshit, saying they looked behind the treehouse multiple times. And I blink, and there it is. Right behind him, and the split second that I blink, I become hysterical. He calms me down and talks me through it, saying that it was just M being a dickhead. About an hour passes of nothing happening, and I go inside only to see this thing again in our chuck pen, just staring at me. I tell my parents and sister, and she says that she put her hand in the spar and did it all. The spar was bone dry at the time of this. If anyone has any insight about this, please let me know. I have looked online throughout the years, but the only thing that somewhat resembles what I saw was the rake, or a version of Slender Man. And I thought I should add this. I live on Mount Tambourine, Queensland, Australia, and I saw something similar about a year ago whilst back camping with my mates twice. It was super fast for the second and third time.
Unfortunately, this story may be rather short, as I only got a glance at it. Additionally, this happened only about 20 minutes ago, so I'm still shaken up by it. Regardless, I'm a student at Auburn University. I was on the phone with someone, venting about why business majors need to learn calculus. Since me and her kept talking, I decided to not go straight back to my apartment, and instead drove down a country road while we kept conversing. The road is mostly surrounded by trees with some sparse houses and the occasional gas station or other business sprinkled along one side of the road. I knew I needed to get back to my apartment to keep studying, so after 4 or so miles, I turned around and was headed back. A few minutes later, still driving down the same road, and in a stretch with some buildings with their lights on to my driver's side, I glanced at my passenger side window and saw a pale, humanoid body leap out of a tree and land in the ditch to the right of my truck. It was rainy and dark, so I couldn't see entirely clearly. But there was enough illumination from a light on in a parking lot to make out human-like arms, legs, and just how white its skin was. It looked like it was curled up in a ball as well, which doesn't make sense why it would be doing that while jumping, but I know I could make out the clear silhouette of arms, legs, and I could tell that it was human-sized. I immediately pushed on the brakes to see if I could get a better look, and I swear I saw the red brake light glinting off the white skin as it moved along the ditch to the opposite direction from me and back towards the tree line. It was like I stopped thinking as what I just saw registered with me and the shock hit me. I looked in the mirror and my face was as pale as the thing's skin. The girl I was talking to had continued talking during all this, as she didn't have any idea that this happened, and I realized that I'd responded to the last few things she said with sure or other short responses like that. I thought about telling her what I saw, but I decided against it, as I didn't want to sound insane. I drove back to my apartment and told one of my roommates about it, who also is interested in things like this. He believed me, and we ended up joking about it a bit, which calmed me down. Sorry if this isn't the most descriptive or best written post. I think I'm still shocked at what I saw, but I wanted to see if y'all think there's any reasonable explanation or if it's what I think it is. What freaks me out even more is that I was on this subreddit earlier today. I've always been interested in stuff like this, and I stumbled across a comment where a guy said that his brother also had a possible sighting in Auburn as well. Please, let me know what y'all think.
I was probably 15 or late 14 at that time, and it was midsummer time. Me and 2 of my friends left the girl's house late at night, basically sneaking out since she lived kinda deep in the countryside, about a 45-minute walk to get to the city line. We left about 2 in the morning. Me and my 2 friends, we stepped out of our country subdivision road onto a main paved country road. We took a left onto the main road, and when we look on our right, you could basically see just the road and woods in each direction with some mailboxes. But on the right side, opposite our direction, at the top or end of our view on the road, we could see just a white light or reflector, imagine. Obviously, that wasn't on our mind. Our mind was not being caught by cops or anything out past curfew. So we walked left to the opposite direction. As we were walking, cars occasionally drove by, so to be safe, we would hide in the woods or tree line every time a car passes us by, in case that it was a cop. Every time we would watch a car go by our opposite traveling direction, we would look back, and the white object was getting closer quite fast. You could only see it in the headlights, and once the headlights were gone, it was also gone, and we continued walking, all seeing it, just confused but didn't care to wait. We got about to the town line, and this thing was probably only 200 to 500 feet behind us. And again, we could only see it in passing headlights, and none of the cars seemed to notice it. When the creature was close enough, we could see that it had translucent white skin with big black holes as eyes. Long limbs, looked pretty skinny, but still could have been anywhere between 6 to 8, maybe more feet. We get into the start of town with house subdivision streets, basically townhomes. Every four-way we got to on our left, looking a four-way our opposite block street over, we could see the thing walking with our pace. And when I got a side view of it, I noticed its arms hung down pretty low. It's like it was looking at us, but wasn't. Me and my friends that night were not on any drugs, and we snuck outside at night quite a bit, so it wasn't just some fear or mistake. We were pretty calm, I guess, or casual, because it kept distance, and we were about in town. We were more worried about ourselves getting caught by the law. And to this day, I still ride my bike around town at night, and I have for years, but I haven't seen anything at night like that since, or before. I sometimes guess if it was just my vision, but both my friends saw it and definitely seen it 3 more times without headlights at opposite 4 ways. It was a gray, kinda cloudy night. Does anybody know what I saw? And here are the top comments from my last video. And here's the riddle for this video. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.